my name is Liz Garofalo. I'm an extension educator at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. We're at Cold Spring Orchard in Belchertown right now. This is our research facility for fruit production. This is a cider planting that we top worked, grafted over, beginning in 2018. We're now starting to get a full crop from most of our varieties. We have 11 varieties here. This year has been especially interesting for me as a plant pathologist because we've had a bit of Fireblight this year. We've got 2 varieties in particular that have been hit hard. So the first of our 11 varieties that we have is Court Pen du Plat. We did not see any Fireblight develop in this variety this year. This will be the first year we'll have a good crop on it, so it's the first year I'll be able to analyze how it works for cider fruit. The next variety that we have is Medaille D'or. Medaille D'or is notoriously hard hit by Fireblight, and this year was no exception. These 3 trees all still have strikes in them. The original strikes that showed up in this tree were pruned out well below visible symptoms. The strikes that are currently here are new since those symptoms were pruned out. Some of these strikes do have flower buds associated with them, but the rest of them appear to be true shoot strikes, which means that the infection came from within the plant itself. All right, so our next variety in this row is Alpemain. Again, we escaped Fireblight with this one, but this variety did not set much of a crop this year, which is kind of interesting. Last year we had a pretty heavy crop on it, which is different in its own right because a graft only 2 years old you wouldn't expect to have that much fruit on, but it was really heavy fruiting. This year it's a light crop. One of the other varieties we have in the row, which I'll get to in a minute, also had a light crop on it this year, but no Fireblight here. The next one that we have is St. Edmunds Russet. Again, this is the first year that we've had any fruit on this one. Relatively light as far as I can tell, but having not seen this crop before, I don't really have a point of reference for that. You can see some fruit clusters that didn't set on this. And again, there's no Fireblight in here. Next we have what should be an Egremont Russet. However, one of the hazards with collecting budwood to create a new orchard is that sometimes things aren't labeled properly when you collect the budwood. And so what I actually believe that we have here is a Macintosh. As you can see, these are not russeted the way the St. Edmunds were. So, no Fireblight. I'm not even sure that I would care if it had Fireblight at this point. Next, we've got one of the most quintessential New England cider varieties. This is Redfield. You can see that we do have some issues going on. We've got some foliar disease. Looks like frog eye. But there's no Fireblight in this. The fruit looks good. We had kind of a decent fruit set last year, and we have a decent fruit set again this year. This is a red fleshed, so the juice is going to be a very pretty, what people like to call a rosé color. But yeah, no Fireblight, a little bit of Japanese beetle, but that's happening everywhere. Good crop, some frog eye. Next one here is Michelin. This is the first year it's cropping, so I don't really have anything to say about the fruit itself in terms of cider. The structure of the tree is looking good. There's not a lot of blindwood, which sometimes we see with cider varieties. There's no Fireblight in it, and there's really no other foliar disease going on with this like we have with the Redfield. The next variety that we have in our row here is Ellis Bitter. This was the second variety that was hit pretty hard with Fireblight. The interesting difference between Ellis Bitter and Medaille D'or in terms of Fireblight infection is when we came through and cut out the Fireblight on Ellis Bitter, there were no resurgent Fireblight strikes. With the Medaille D'or, you saw new strikes that came after we had pruned out the initial infections. So we still have a good crop on here. The tree is looking happy and healthy. Next in our lineup, we have Kingston Black, which I am super thrilled with right now. it's considered to be a bear to grow. What I'm really excited about is that it did not get Fireblight this year. We've got a crop on it, which is going to be fun to work with. We've got some challenges. It appears to be a bit of a tip bearer. So we've got a lot of wood that isn't being fruitful. So that's one of the things that, is maybe not so great about Kingston Black. It's important to note again, remember we grafted these on in 2018. This is the first year it's cropped. So there's not a big frame of reference in my experience for how this is all going to shake out. We'll see as the years go on. Then we have Ashmead's kernel. Now this is that second variety that I mentioned that didn't really put on a great crop. It had some fruit on it last year, but this year it doesn't really have much, which is interesting because to the best of my knowledge, Ashmead's is not really considered to be a biennial bearing tree, which means that the crop should be consistent from year to year, whereas a variety like Northern Spy would have a good crop one year and not so much the next year. So it's interesting to see this. Now remember, around bloom, we had some odd weather. It was really, really, really cool, and then it got warm rather quickly, which is one of the reasons, of course, we've had this Fireblight issue. So I suspect that one of the things that happened this year with Ashmead's is that the blossoms were either damaged by the cold weather or the weather wasn't sufficient for pollination to occur. The final variety that we have in this row in our cider block is Foxwell. So we had at one point 3 of these trees. The first 2 died, not from Fireblight, thankfully, but from various other maladies that afflict our trees that we can't quite identify. So this is the first year it's fruiting, and we have no Fireblight in it. Again, that's exciting news. I think that's always fun. I'm also really excited when it gets Fireblight, so you never can tell. So it looks good. We've got a light crop, but again, it's its 3rd year in existence here in this planting, so moving forward we'll have more information to share.